Please welcome Alex Echols to the show. Welcome, Alex.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate me being on today with you.
Oh, all the way from Miami
Yeah.
in your
My,
new apartment
hmm
on a new adventure. And, I found, I'm sitting here thinking and, I found you on Instagram and that's what I was trying to remember. Because when someone inspires me, I am so grateful I have this podcast because I want to share them with my world, right? So what an opportunity I get to have this podcast and to be able to find people like you that did something in me, but I didn't realize why. Sometimes I'm that person that just knows. I have a knowing. And so that's what it was with you. So I'm like, I'm gonna ask Alex. You say yes, we figure out a time. And then I start to go down the rabbit hole of Alex Echols. I'm like, oh my gosh, I get it. And then there's more magic, and then there's more magic. And then I feel like, I'm a mother of two daughters and I'm 55. I mean, I couldn't be your mother, but maybe. But when I look at raising someone and how you have been, what you've gone through, and it just kind of shined a light on the way how I've been raising my daughters because you and I speak the same language, and what I believe in is what you believe in. And I had my daughters so much later in my life, 37 and 40. So I had done all the work and I was ready. I was like, I'm going to be so intentional and, start with the gratitude journals before they could even write. And we did our affirmations. We, meditated, everything. I was super intentional. So now, as teenagers and one going off to college, it's like, oh my gosh, the fruit of my labor. But you don't know you're doing that. You don't know it's working until
hmm
you get to now, right? So when I'm looking at your life and when I see it from the higher perspective, growing up in Chicago and not really a great, that kind of a rough, neighborhoods and everything, and a beautiful family, loving, and you get to a point when you're 17. So my daughter's 18. So I'm still reflecting and I'm just building up to so you can begin to tell everybody your story. But then I'm thinking, okay, there's that one moment in school in a religion class that sparked a mindfulness meditation, right? And then you start to expand on that. And so, as a mom reflecting on, I wonder where their magic moment and when they're going to uncover what's going to be that defining moment that really starts that pivot and that shifting of seeing your magic and uncovering your passions and taking the breadcrumbs and walking down that path of life and seeing the beauty of Alex Echols, but then seeing the what people would call roadblocks, a cancer diagnosis, stage 4 cancer, all these roadblocks that people think, and then they stop cold in their tracks. And then they come from fear. But what I love about you, Alex, so much is that you get these what people would call roadblocks. And instead of fear, you call it like an experiment. Let me see what I can do to to shift it. Like I know I'm sure there was fear in those moments in your life for sure, but you're just an inspiration. People that I've known that've gone through cancer and all the things, and to know and how you speak about it and how you uplift people and what it's given you to, it's like I feel like it's the fuel that fires what you do now.
hmm
And so that's kind of my little Alex Echols um, beginning this conversation because I really want people to understand that you've really touched me. And I feel like you are just at the beginning point of your life of doing what you're going to do. I mean, I feel like you're just ready to just like the butterflies behind you, like you're just ready to fly. And I mean, you've been flying, but right now you're ready to take off. So with that, where would you like to begin? And where would you like to show people how you uncovered your magic?
Well, first off, I just want to say thank you so much for not only you inviting and welcoming me on the show with you today, but also I don't know where to begin because that just warms my heart so much, just being able to hear parts of my own story the story that I was consciously and then sometimes unconsciously writing throughout my own life. And for you to be able to reflect that back to me so beautifully. So I first off want to say thank you so much for that. Um, I don't know, like let's just hop in. The thing about the fear, right? Um, there was a lot of fear that I had throughout my life, and I think that to some extent I still work with the fear on a day-to-day basis. And the way in which it shows up in my own personal life is that it's a fear and excitement, almost like a helix, right? That is integrated and intertwined with each other that allows me to be full of inspiration, full of excitement with being able to trust and have faith in the steps that I'm taking in my life, while also being able to still have that nervousness. Because the nervousness, for me personally, and I love to share this with individuals when I'm in my um, cohorts that I do, when I'm on stages and things like that. But the nerves mean that you actually care about what you're doing.
Right.
So if you have nervousness, if you have nerves that are there, it's because you actually, there's something that is deeper underneath the core of what it is that you're doing. And that's something in itself to be grateful for. Because there are, especially in 2024, there are a lot of people who they haven't even uncovered their magic. They don't even realize that magic actually exists within them,
Hmm.
because when we zoom out, magic exists in every single person on planet Earth and probably all the other places
Right.
around there as well. And I think that it's incredible that from such a young age that you were able to pass that on and bestow upon your daughters such powerful practices for them
Hmm.
to be able to have within their lives. For me, back in high school, that uncovering of meditation. So my class that I was in was called World Studies, World Religious Studies. And we did things that had to do with Christianity. We did things that had to do with like old Incan religions. Meditation just happened to be one of those that the very first time that I meditated, we were all on the floor. I fell asleep. But there
Hmm.
was still something in that ability for me to get as relaxed and as comfortable with myself in the middle of a class. I went to an all boys school for me to be able to drift off and actually fall asleep.
Hmm.
There was some peace that I uncovered within that. There was some groundedness. There was earth that I was able to connect with that. And through connecting with earth, I think I was able to connect with like a higher power through that as well. And the meditation was something that it always continued as like a golden thread, a mindfulness thread for me throughout my early 20s all the way to my later 20s. And I started to go to deeper retreats. So for instance, I went to Vipassana, and I went and I sat for about 11 and a half days in its complete silence,
Wow.
right? So when I first get introduced to meditation and mindfulness, first is when I get into my very first Vipassana retreat, night and day. And so I would say, even in that, there was not only the fears that were speaking up and trying to claw themselves out of my experience, but there was a lot of anxiety that came with that as well, because up until that point, I don't know how much I gave myself the opportunity, the invitation, and also the experience of being able to just sit with myself and be with myself, and to be with what actually comes up without having the ability to have outputs through talking to other people, through writing, through creating and doing any type of art. And so that was one of those big sort of uncovering the magic points in my life when I realized that we can truly create anything we want when we're able to know ourselves at a deep level. And I
Hmm.
think that for me, that's where a lot of the, let's call it uncovering your magic, really starts. It starts when we create and we sign up for that quest to
Hmm.
really get to know who we are. And I think that the challenges, the fears, the anxieties, the story, right? The experience that we have, the experience that we live through is giving us all these opportunities. This is the universe, God, however we want to describe it, little knocks on the door to say, like, hey, this is an opportunity. Get to know yourself, create yourself a little bit more from this, and keep writing your story from here as well. So, love to know where you want to go from here.
Well, I wanted to, so those 11 days, I mean, for some, that's such a dedication and a commitment. And
Yeah.
to put yourself in that position, you have to have this mindset of like really wanting to go deep and, but what goes through your mind? What are you uncovering when you're just sitting there? You can't do anything. You're just sitting there. And I've interviewed people that have had that same experience. So, but it's the process of your brain. Like what do you go through as a human? Like in a spiritual way? Like, how does that work for you? How
Well,
did that work for you?
yeah, I was gonna say that actually, is that I think that for everybody it's different, right? Because I think that a retreat of that groundedness, it's like putting your life under a magnifying glass. It's putting your thoughts, your emotions, like all the things that are just above the surface, but also deeply entrenched below the surface. It's like bringing a magnifying glass to that. So for me, my very first time, I think I was in like 26 years old, 25 years old. And I was just really just trying to figure out, who am I in this world? What is my place in this world? Because up until that point, I had carved out so much as to who I thought Alex needed to be in the world, that mid 20s, that started to like kind of break away, like some of the mountains do on the side of a cliff near the ocean.
Mhm.
And a big part of that was because it was born out of where I grew up. Growing up on the south side of Chicago, I had to create some sort of protective mechanism, some sort of identity, some sort of Alex, a specific type of avatar, in order for me to actually be able to get out of there and not only survive getting out of there, but also be able to thrive in all the things that I did after that. And when you're young, unless you have someone who's passing on those gratitude practices and giving gratitude journals at such a young age, there is a lot of challenges that can come
Mhm.
up, right? And in the face of challenge, there is then a lot of ego that can come up. And my life was driven a lot by survival and wanting to just do my best. But in my mid teenage years, early 20s, it was also kind of driven by ego as well, simply because that was my way of knowing how to survive and how to take care of myself up until a certain point. So coming back to Vipassana, this is when so much of that identity that I thought I had created and known myself to be, when it started to crack and when it started to splinter, and I started to notice, oh, there's actually a lot of pain that is under there.
Mhm.
There's a lot of sadness that's under there. There is a young boy that thirsts for more joy, that thirsts for connection, that wants what every other human on planet Earth wants, to be seen and to be able to see, right? And so for me, during that first experience of me going and sitting for these 11 and a half days, that's what it was for me. It was a sort of deep reckoning.
Mhm.
And it was such a beautiful experience, because when we first got there, I was living in Australia at the time, in Sydney. And this happened in a place called the Blue Mountains, where it's about 2 hours, 2.5 hours outside of Sydney. And the reason they call it the Blue Mountains is because the ozone's not really there, right? But in general, it just looks like the mountains are blue because of how blue the sky is. So it's kind of like reflecting off.
Mhm. Yeah.
And this is where the retreat center was as well, for the Vipassana Retreat Center. And when we first got there, I was dropped off. It was sunny. It was totally cool, everything. I'm like, all right, it's going to be sunny all the way through. About a day and a half, 2 days in, just turned into dark thunderstorms, heavy rain. So I saw this as such an interesting thing because while there was these splinterings and this emotional weather storm that was starting to brew within me, it was happening
Yeah. Huh.
outside of my actual experience as well. And so it was such a beautiful narrative and arc and tandem, in tandem with each other throughout the entire thing, that by the end of the retreat, I'm not saying that I was enlightened or anything like that because I'm not really a big fan of that. I think that as a human being, that we're always going to be learning, we're always going to be growing. And I think that at a deeper level, the big focus should be on finding joy and what that actually means, right? But by the end of this retreat, the clouds broke, the rain
Uh,
stopped. There was a big, beautiful rainbow just in the sky, and there was this family of kangaroo. There was
oh,
a Joey, the baby kangaroo, a mid-sized kangaroo, and then like probably the father kangaroo. And in the back was the mountains and the rainbow, and I was like, what is happening? You know what I mean?
oh,
Because
I love it.
I felt a certain arc within my own self, my own spirit, but I also was able to see that on the outside as well. And that was one of those times that I'll never forget. It's one of those times that I'll always have locked in my heart and in my being with a lot of gratitude.
Oh, what an experience. Gosh, to have that at that age is amazing. Yeah, I love it. Anyway, so let's continue because there's so much more magic to uncover. So when I'm listening to your or looking and learning about your life, up until you experienced the diagnosis of the stage 4 cancer, I feel like you were, you know, preparing for that almost. Like it was like
Mm,
you were, the God, the universe, source was like, okay, Alex, you're going to learn this, and then you're going to do this, and you're going to get all these things, pick all these breadcrumbs up. And then one day you're going to get told that you have stage 4 cancer. And then we're going to see how you can use what you've taught yourself, or, you've picked up the breads, crumbs, and see what do you do now, right? With it.
mm,
Do you agree with
mhm.
that?
I would agree with that. I think that it went from watching the masterclass to having to live the masterclass.
Yes.
That's probably the way that I would describe it. And it's funny because about a week or 2 weeks into, I started with traditional therapy. I was very much listening to the white coats because they invoked quite a bit of fear within me, just as how important it was for me to begin with treatments and all of that. And I remember about 2 weeks in, I went to my aunt and uncle's house, and I was sitting outside, and I just went and sat by their pool. And I just kind of laying back, and I just kind of wanted to just be by myself. And I remember my uncle had come over, and he was just sitting next to me, and he was very reassuring and saying like, "You'll definitely get through this and everything, and this is the time to put forth everything that you've always learned. This is the time for you to actually use it and put it all together."
Yeah.
Right? Because it's easy to think that we know what we're going to do until it actually happens,
Oh, I'm
right?
sure.
It's so easy. It's easy to say, all right, when I have kids, I'm gonna be the best. I will be a great parent, but I'm gonna be the best parent in the world, and they're not gonna eat sugar, and they're gonna do all these things. I can say that now because I don't have that experience, but when that time comes, that experience will teach me just as much as I'm teaching it. It will give me just as much as I'm giving it. You know what I mean? And that is a way that I have discovered all experience happen throughout life. And so for me, if there is one thing that I have learned over these last, let's call it 8 years of my life. So being diagnosed with cancer, going through treatments, both traditional and very non-traditional ways and means of healing myself through that cancer, going through the deepest, darkest depression after cancer and having crazy amounts of debt, to all the years that have then followed up until this point. One of the biggest things that it's taught me is the importance of letting go, the importance of being able to detach from how I think things need to look,
Hmm.
right? Even if we were to look at it from the perspective of the white coats when I was diagnosed, they're supposed to tell us how it should look. But at the same time, if I would have listened to them the entire time, I don't think I would probably still be here,
Hmm.
just based on how my experience was going. And
Right.
so that being able to kind of take the claws off of the experience and being able to kind of do this, curiosity is needed, but also I love this quote that curiosity and also um, just being able to have a sense of wonder with your experience and with life, that's the thing that actually leads to wisdom, right?
Hmm.
And me being able to share my story, my experience, things like that right now, one can call it wisdom, but it all had to start with me being able to detach from what I think it needed to look like and trusting a little bit more in myself, but also in the process, in the greater and the beyond, and being able to have faith in the steps that I was taking.
When you say, you followed the white coat protocols and you're doing what you were supposed to do when, following the yellow brick road of life, right? What people say, you got to do this if you have cancer. So you're of course, it's this moment in your life where it's, shocking and I could die and what do I do? And follow, they're going to give me the answers. But when did that switch? When did you start thinking, I need to figure out my way. I need to figure out another way. It's not resonating with me.
Mm. I realized that it wasn't resonating with me when I realized that my body was not responding in the way that it was supposed to the traditional therapies. So at that time, my now wife, Maria, and I, we were huge nomads. We had been living in Australia for 3 years. And after that, popped all around the globe. And when I returned back to America, I didn't have insurance. So, health insurance. So, for me, when I was diagnosed and was going through all these initial tests and everything, what happened is that I entered into the county system. And that's something that honestly, I think it's just a factory. It comes down to a numbers game because there's a certain thing called within the medical industry. eh, I'm sure this happened even throughout the pandemic that people have what's called empathic distress, right? Because there is just a sheer amount of people that are always depending on them, they don't have the capacity to actually be there for you. And because they don't have the capacity to be there for you, it leads to negligence. It leads to, in my case, to messing up some of my veins and causing, severe scar tissue damage within me, things like that. And so after about my initial 5 or 6 months, I had gone through a full round of chemotherapy. Um, I was meeting with a doctor every week or every 2 weeks and everything. And within 10 days, 15 days of me completing the entire full round of chemotherapy, my cancer had came back and it was much more aggressive than what it was before. And a big part of what I began to start discovering and noticing in that was they did not tell me the right answer when it came to the question that I had around my diet.
Hmm.
I asked them at the very beginning, is there anything that I need to stop eating? Is there anything that I need to start eating more of so that I give myself the best opportunity to get past even survival, be able to thrive, be able to live the life that I'm used to? And their answer was, no, eat whatever you want, it's fine. But one of the things that when I started to do my own, I'm a nerd, like through and through in so
Hmm.
many different capacities. But when I started to do my own heavier, deeper research into white papers and books and all of these different types of things, I noticed that for a lot of the alternative therapies, the number one thing that they talked about is how bad sugar is for you
Right.
and what it does to a healthy body and also what it does to a sick body,
Hmm.
a body with illness. And for someone with cancer, it just gives it more fuel. It gives the cancer more fuel just to continue to eat away. And when I discovered that in one white paper, two white papers, and previous alternative therapies that came out of Europe back in the 1950s and 60s, where people were being healed, books like YouTube, like all of this, I was like, okay, there's something here that I'm not being told. And because I'm learning this type of information, I'm not only going to start integrating and practicing it within my life, I'm going to figure out what are all the other things over here that they're not telling me over here.
Hmm.
And that started me on the most nourishing voyage, but also probably one of the most disciplined voyages that I have ever been on, but that I also know that probably anyone has been on. My life, I changed my life like this. It was just night and day. And to me, it makes sense. I knew it very, very clear. This is not my time to go. And so I need to do everything that is in my power. I need to be connecting to that greater source, the greater and beyond's power, so that I have the opportunity to stay here on planet Earth and keep not only uncovering my magic, but helping people discover theirs as well. Because I think that the world could use so much more of that these days, in
Oh,
this year that we're living in.
oh, that's for sure. When you
Yeah.
started doing all your, fasting and all the things that talk about, that you started, the vegan diet, um, colon hydrotherapy, coffee enemas, meditation, counseling, fasting, intermittent fasting. When you say discipline, that's not even doesn't even do it justice. Like when I'm listening to your story and like but when you have your life to either, you want to live, so I'm going to do what it takes. And that's what you did.
Hmm.
And you were
Yeah.
so disciplined.
Hmm.
But, just even the fasting, I'm a big believer in that. And I know that, even 5 days of fasting is like the power of a chemotherapy treatment without the repercussions of that whole terrible thing. But, when I think of how you just shifted so quickly and you just saw the light and you started reading the books and doing all these things and coming up with all these remedies or whatever, these answers that were going to get you there. When was the day that you went back to the doctor and you saw how your cancer had like regress? I mean, when you say you finished the chemo and it got worse and it was more aggressive, now you're doing all these alternative things, staying away from that. When did you start seeing the benefits from that?
Mm. So I agree with you. I think that discipline is probably not the right word for it. I think that what happened is that I became devoted. And I became devoted to not only being able to see myself through this journey and this process, um, but devoted to myself through the process as well. So that's something I'm going to play around with, the difference between being disciplined versus devoted to something, because I think that there's magic. There's
Yes.
something special in just what devotion means, right?
Hmm.
I think that it is much more deeper and much more grounded than discipline, but it also allows for a lot more openness and joy for to be part of it too. So I'm gonna play around with that one. Um, for me, one of the things that I'm always going to be grateful for is the right people in the white coats, and then also all the alternative therapies that I did, because my story didn't necessarily end with me learning all this information and then I just completely took over my life and that was me wrapped up in a bow and I was healed. What actually happened, as a little bit more of the story too, is that I not only discovered that my cancer had come back because I literally could just feel it. There were certain growths that were happening right when I was diagnosed that I started to notice that were coming back right? So my clavicle and sternum was separated, and cancer just kind of flooded into that. And so that was one of the ways that I knew, like, okay, there's something going on with me, right? And it was a few weeks later, over New Year's Eve, we were at Soho House in Chicago, and I had the most intense, most incredible pain, I think, to this day I've ever experienced. It was
Wow.
just nauseating pain. And this is past all the heavy pharmaceuticals that they were giving me too. Like I was using what they gave me, and the pain was still
Hmm.
coming through, to the point that we were dancing at Soho House at 12:01, and at 2 o'clock in the morning I was at the hospital because I needed to be basically rushed there. And after scans and them offering me morphine and all of this type of stuff, they discovered that I had a growth that was pushing against my spine. And that is where all that pain was coming from. Because up until that point, I also was suffering from a fractured vertebrae. So it's not only pushing
Jeez.
against my spine, but it's also pushing against a wither, like a kind of fractured, spine at the very bottom because of where the vertebrae were. And that's what was causing me all of that pain. So it was really that episode. I was in the hospital. It's crazy for me to even think about this right now. But I was in the hospital for 4 days. It went from dancing in Soho House to being in the hospital and being there for 4 days. And it was in the hospital when I was there with my mom, I was there with Maria. My sister had flown in just to check on me. And it was there, very similar to that Vipassana retreat, right?
Hmm.
Where I started to go in at a much deeper level. And what I was being told, what was coming out is, these are not the right people for you, Alex. These are not the right people for you. This is not the right institution. This is not the right place for you. So it's time to move on, and it's time to move forward from here. And I took about 2 to 3 months of not having really any traditional therapy and medicine or anything like that. And I essentially just started to go. This will tell you a lot about my character as well. I essentially started to go out and interview care teams just to make sure that they were going to be there the way that I not only wanted them to be there for me, but also needed there to be there for me.
Hmm.
Because I'm someone that I'm thorough. I like to ask
Right.
questions. And so I need somebody who is not going to feel like I'm asking too much.
Right. I love that.
And after about the 2.5 to 3 months, I had found a new care team at U Chicago, and they were actually probably they were the most perfect care team at that point in my life, that we worked in tandem together. They completely said, keep doing all of these alternative therapies and things that you're doing, and let's make sure that we do use some of this integrative medicine. At that time, it was essentially this thing that's becoming so much more of a big fad out there in the world, which is putting healthy cells back into the body, right? And I went through an entire process of that, through conditioning, through all the different ways that they needed to take my, let's call it, all my cells out of my body, including the cancerous cells, clean my blood plasma up to the point where I had went and stayed at the hospital. I had my own suite up there for 3 weeks. I was sitting on top of the world. And this is where I was given the opportunity of new life.
Hmm.
I was given the opportunity of having a second life, and it was also where they literally, to some extent, had to shut my body down and restart it in order for me to be even on this interview with you today. So
Wow.
I'm so grateful for that care team. But in addition to that, I also have to say that I have gratitude for me noticing the negligence for what it was, for me being told eat whatever you want, and for me to be able to discover that, because it's different when somebody tells you something and you do it one time. It's very different when you learn something for yourself and then you know how to do it every single time, right? It's the difference
Right.
between being given a fish versus being taught how to fish.
Yes.
And I've been taught how to fish, and I've been teaching myself how to fish through a lot of the different circumstances throughout my life, but also a lot of the challenges as well.
Yes. And that's devotion. That is what it is.
Mm, mm.
Gosh, I love that word. I want to use that word more now. But
Yeah, right?
it's devotion. It's everything. It's like uh, you think of a spiritual practice, right? Or your meditation, your breath work, your gratitude, your automatic writing, that's devotion, and it
Mhm.
takes every day. And it's I know you talk about being consistent and I love like just everything when, the gratitude and watching you and these videos and knowing how you look at life so with these eyes of such gratitude because of what you have been through. And if people could live in that moment like you do, our world would, even if 10 people, it's like it doesn't take much if we could shift this, this view of people of going through something like you went through and then shifting your mind now in your life to it. I mean, I watch how you go on your travels. I mean, you're going to Japan, right? Right?
Yeah.
You're getting ready to go to Japan. Let's talk about that and we'll break up this um, topic. But let's go to there. Like you want to go to Japan right now because it's the Okinawa is the blue zone. Explain to me what are you drawn to that for?
Well, there is many reasons why I want to go to Japan and why we're heading to Okinawa specifically. I think that for me, I this will be, I believe, my second blue zone that I've been to in my life. Um, I didn't even know I was in a blue zone when I had the opportunity to go live in Sardinia after high school. And I was there living for several months. Had no idea back then. I don't think the book was even released at that point. And it just so happened that recently I rediscovered the Blue Zones, and I was looking into all of the different components and facets that go into what helps individuals reach that age of becoming a centenarian, right? And the diet is such a huge part of that. It's not only what you're eating and consuming, but it's also the type of water and the quality water that you're putting into your body. And it so happens that a lot of these places are along the water as well, right? But in addition to that, one of them is the really big community aspect. Being able to give yourself to something that is bigger, greater, and larger than who you are, but then also be able to have individuals within your circle, within your community that you can grow with, that you can celebrate with, that you can enjoy life with. So in many ways, that's one of the big reasons that we're going. We're going there because we have a very large community of people who will be flying in from all parts of the world. And we're going to be learning together, growing together. I'm going to be taking individuals through one of my signature live experiences that I'm so excited to be doing called the Pool of Gratitude. And what that's really about is very similar to what we've been exploring throughout this entire episode all today, which is all right, imagine that there is something that you want within your life. Just imagine just for a moment. And this is something for the viewers, for the listeners to think about. Like, just imagine one thing that you actually want in your life, right?
Okay, got
And
it.
then when you're thinking about that one thing that you want, think about the emotional experience that it's going to give you once you actually have it, right?
Hmm.
So I think that for a lot of people, that emotional experience, what it looks like is something that will bring joy and a smile to their face. It's something that will allow them to feel more secure. It's something that will allow them to attain some level of greater, higher levels of emotions or happiness or mastery within their lives, right? And one of the things that I have not only talking about learning the masterclass versus living the masterclass, one of the things that I've learned throughout my entire experienced, especially over these last few years, is that oftentimes it's not the actual thing that we're even wanting, it's the emotional experience that that's going to
Right.
give us. So why not start tapping into that emotional experience right now?
Right. I love that.
Why why not connect to that joy? Why not connect to that compassion? Why not connect to that happiness and that gratitude and the appreciation? Why not use that all right now for the thing that you think you want? And why not have it throughout the entire process of you creating and bringing in and receiving that what you want within your life? And so that's become such a beautiful practice for me. It's something that I love. I feel like it's a golden nugget, you know, it's like a magic wand when people realize that, oh, I can start having what I want right now, and I don't even need the actual thing. Huh.
Right.
It's like a big light bulb that just goes off for people. And you said it right. I am huge on gratitude and appreciation, not only because of the certain set of configurations and challenges and life components that I have lived up until this point. In spite of that, yes, that's reason for me to celebrate and be grateful. But I'm alive, which is another reason to to be in celebration and grateful, but also because I know that I am able from here to continue to create exactly in whatever I want using and leveraging these tools. And it comes from a very authentic place as well because of the amount of challenges that
Right.
I've experienced in life. So I think that for individuals, right, if we were to use the name of the podcast again, Uncover Your Magic.
Yes.
One of the first steps for that is don't run away from the things that scare you. Don't run away from the things that have been challenging to you. Get support with them, and
Hmm.
support can look like mental health support, going and having work with a therapist or working in a community group and just being able to talk it out. It may be something like somatic release therapy and being able to shake it out. It may be going into a drum circle and being able to dance the hell out of it. Whatever that looks like for a particular person with the situation, with the experience that they're having, I think that that is one of the most important steps, but it's also one of the most overlooked parts of
Hmm.
what uncovering your magic actually looks like. Because here's the thing, I've been thinking about this. I'm going to be putting this on social media sometime soon. Something along the lines of, all right, we brush our teeth every other day, right?
Every
And
other.
you brush, yeah, that's gonna be my hook. That's gonna be my hook. When people are like, "What is this idiot talking about?" Hopefully, he brushes his teeth every day, right? We brush our teeth every other day, right? And we're taking care of our teeth. We're doing dental care. Where is that same type of care for our hearts
Yes.
and for our emotions and for our feelings and also for our thoughts? Where is that practice, that devotion that we are giving ourselves on a daily basis so that we are not only taking care of ourselves, but so that we're also moving through our experience, right? One of the big things that I think about is I keep going back to where and the type of world that we live in right now.
Hmm.
I think that a lot of us, just like you said, a lot of us would be so much more connected, so much more intertwined, and so much more just loving of each other if we first knew, first and foremost, how to take care of ourselves.
Hmm. Yep.
This is somebody who had stage 4 cancer. So obviously, up until a certain point in my life, and even now in some ways, I did not know how to take care of myself properly. But it was that challenge that then gave me the opportunity for me to be able to do that. And I hope that people don't have to go through what I went through. I hope that somebody doesn't have to have their life on the line for them to recognize how beautiful life is and how precious it is, not only for their own life, but for every single life that is around them as well.
Yes. Oh,
Every single
so
life.
my word for the year was connection. And I know you talk about that a lot. And I started doing these in-person retreats, this starting in January and right here in San Diego. And it's just that when you're explaining me the pool of gratitude and you're asking me like, how do you want to feel? It brings tears to my eyes because sitting in those retreats and watching people uncover their magic and maybe for the first time, not even knowing what they were coming to, but just because I'm their friend, I'll come wherever you want me to go. And not understanding that and seeing them uncover their magic, that feeling that have inside of me during that time, I'm like, oh, I mean, even you talking sometime in this interview, like I'll get tears in my eyes because I look at you and with that same word devotion, because, it takes a person, it shouldn't take a person to be said they could die. We're all going to die, but put, middle of the beginning of your life, have, this stage 4 cancer, you know, thing and right in your face and then think, okay, what am I going to do? I got to
Mm,
do, it shouldn't, that's where, when you're saying that, I would just be like, oh my gosh, I just want everyone to understand that, you know, yeah, hope to God, you don't have to have that life threat, your life threatening moment, but to live your life in the way you do and the magic that you see every moment and what you're doing to inspire others to do that. And because I feel like as I look at life, like you chose as a soul to experience this cancer and you had to go through that because you had to be the person that is on the other side showing people what you do now. But to go through what you did and now see it lights me up. And you are this
mm,
like, um, I don't know, just this pool of gratitude, right? For one thing. What in my mind, what was going through your mind if I was going to be leading that like you are leading that when you go to Japan? What is in your mind? What are you feeling? What do you want? What are you in your mind wanting to feel? What's new in your, like if you were going to
mm,
explain that to yourself in that pool of gratitude?
mm. Now I just need just a few moments to actually feel that and think about that for myself. I think that part of it, of what I am not only wanting to experience and have in my emotional experience, but also in my everyday living experience is just more freedom. And when I think about freedom, I just don't think about the spaciousness of time and money and all of that. I think about what it means to be free of worry and what it means to be free of not necessarily fear, because I like this idea of being comfortable with the uncomfortable,
Yes,
and being able to continue to live that life, because truly that is what it means to be human.
right.
We think we have time, we think that we have control, but not really, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So freedom in the sense of the emotional contagion that comes up when I may see something out in the world and I don't like it, or when somebody says something that I may not necessarily appreciate. Me not having my emotions rise up so much simply because there is something outside of myself that I don't agree with or that I did not appreciate. Instead, being able to have such a level of mental, emotional, social freedom for myself that I stay grounded, I stay rooted in this being that I am creating with devotion, every single day, that is one of the big things that I'm wanting to create more and more for myself. And right now I'm reading Conversations with God.
Ah, I love that.
And yeah, right. And this is my summary of one of the parts that I've been reading and it's been sticking with me, is that one of the biggest lies or one of the biggest downsides that man gives himself or the human gives themselves is creating their life out of the experience of others,
Mm.
aka caring way too damn much about what this person's going to potentially think of me, how this person over here is going to potentially see me, all the stuff that because from such a young childhood age we weren't giving those same type of practices as
Hmm.
we were with brushing our teeth. So we did not know how to take care of ourselves and build up a healthy level of self esteem. Instead of creating and living and building my life out of what I think the world expects or wants and would like to see from me, always tuning into this right here, this solar plexus, this connection that exists within my physical body, but also carries the spirit of God and the universe within it as well. So that's one thing.
Yeah, I
And
love
then
it.
the other thing is an actual physical being, my wife and I having a beautiful child that we get to bring into the world, and that we get to love. I won't say that we get to raise, that we get to pass on these good morals and good ways of living and seeing the world. No, a being that we get to bring into the world and that we get to love and that we also get to co-create with.
Yes, I love that. You talk about legacy also as one of your
Yeah.
values. What, and now speaking of a child and you being a father, I think about that too. I'm pretty much, we're at the end of the childhood era and on to the next chapter of one of my daughters. But, I look back and think when I was listening to you talk about legacy, like, what have I so far left as a legacy and how important that is as a parent, right? How do you look at that as a father, like wanting to be a father and raising or loving a child?
Mm. I see it as a tremendous, huge undertaking, first off. But in that as well, I hope that I can bring into it the fruitfulness of what I've shared throughout today's um, podcast episode, which is being able to release and allow, right?
Mm-hmm.
Release and allow, because that's the way that the actual co creation actually happens. Not
Right.
only me being able to and not impose or project, but share from my experience being so many more decades older than this being that comes in onto the planet and into our family, not only being able to share from that experience, but also listen to that wisdom that they have simply because they're probably so much closer to God coming right there from it than I
Right.
am anyway, right? I'm
Right.
going back to it. They just came from it. So, it's a big, big difference in that. And so I think that's a huge part of it for me. Um, More than anything, I hope that I can be a relaxed father. I'm I'm wanting to be a relaxed father. And so when I talk about that freedom,
Hmm.
that mental, that emotional freedom, will I pass on some of the trauma that I've experienced in my own life to my kid? Probably.
Right.
But will I continue and always do my absolute best to try to be as present as possible, not only with the future kid that comes into the world, but with everybody that I spend my time with? Because with every moment that passed is an opportunity for us to learn from. You're damn right, I'm going to try. Every single day for the rest of my life, I'm going to try to become more loving, more generous, more patient, more compassionate, more kind, more of all of this. And I personally feel that all of this is just gonna help me equal more joy as well, you
Right.
know. because all of that I am wanting to give to others more and more, I have now discovered. This is a huge lesson that I had to learn and did learn through cancer and depression and everything that ensued after that, is that in order for me to truly give to others, I have to give to myself first.
Right.
And I did not know that. I did not
Hmm.
understand that.
Right. I love that. And you mentioned a little bit ago about worry. Like you don't, fear is okay, but you don't want to worry. And if I look at, if I had gone through what you did, do you go through your days and ever have that worry? Or is that something that you have to work on, like not bringing that into your mind? How does that,
What type what type of worry are we referring to?
like worrying about the cancer, worrying about your health? Do you have that ever in your mind or is that gone?
I don't think it's ever gone.
Okay.
I think that it is very much like all the parts of who we are. We either make friends of them, we make shadows of them, or we lock them in the basement and act like they don't exist, right?
Right.
The friends are the things that we have integrated. The shadows are the things that we recognize we haven't fully integrated, but they're primed to be integrated. And then those things that are locked away in the basement, those are the things that probably need the most work and the most help, the most support around. I think that when it comes to the worry for me, particularly with my health, it's somewhere between the friend and also continuing to be integrated within me, right?
Hmm.
I part of it. I think that the day that I no longer have to pay any type of debt that is connected to that part of my life, probably some of that worry will go away more and more.
Hmm.
But then that inspires the connection to the thoughts of what we were talking about earlier, which is I can choose for how I want to feel right now.
Right.
If I'm focused, and this is not to say that I won't worry and I won't act like it doesn't exist, but if I can choose gratitude for the thousands of days now that I've been healthy
Hmm.
and that I have been in complete remission, that compared to the worry that may come up and exist over here, it's not necessarily neutralizing it or telling it to be quiet or shut up. It's saying, look at all of this evidence over here. It's okay.
Yes. I
Yeah.
love that. I love that. We're at the end, but where do you see yourself? Like, where are you going in your next, besides wanting to be a father? Like, where are you with your businesses? I know you have an every human, you're coming up with, you're just a business guy and you love to create. And I love
Hmm.
how you teach others the same. And so where are you going? What's your focus right now?
Yeah. Well, first off, thank you so much for having me on today. I
Oh,
always think it's really important to offer gratitude. And I hope that the individuals that are going to have the opportunity to listen, to watch this, that they're able to just take away just one thing from this and be able to not only possibly reflect on, but also use within their own lives to be able to pass that on to someone that needs it within their own life. So thank you so much
wow,
for this
thank you.
opportunity. Yeah. And where am I going? Somewhere with a rocket ship that I have the, an entire just pack of colored Sharpies for me to just paint and draw all over it. You know, like
Oh, that's a great answer. I love it.
if there is an opportunity that has been given to me as a result of everything that I've experienced, walked through, gone through in these last, half decade now, it has been a really deep and earnest invitation for me to step more and more back into just what it means to be a creator and artist in life. So part of that freedom for me is so that I have the freedom for me to write another book, When I talk about the power of presence and gratitude and appreciation, these tools that have been so fundamental on my own journey, I want to write all my books in the past have been white papers or think pieces or business books. No, I want to write I'll put it out there. I want to write
Oh, good.
the type of book that is on the level of Atomic Habits,
Uh-huh.
but it's about how to get the most out of life by being as present as possible.
Mm,
So I just officially put it
there
out
you
there to
go.
the ethos outside of the wife and some of my closest people. But that's like one of the things that I'm moving towards and what I want to create for myself. I think that when bring a kid into the world, that's going to take up a lot of time, and I want to show them. I want to be. I love this quote: "The greatest gift that we can give to others is the clarity of our own example."
Mm, so true. I mean,
Right?
yes, and as a parent, they do what you do, not what you say, right?
Exactly.
And so it's
Exactly.
so important to be that. And I
Yeah.
am so that's been such a focus for me in these last 18 years of being a mom, and being that one that, it was so cute. My oldest came home from school and she's like, I was talking to my friend and she's like, oh, you sound just like your mom. And Paige is like, is that a good thing? But
Probably.
when you hear that, it's like, oh, you just it is the same feeling. It's like you're working, that's we're focused for 18 years and it will be beyond, but for right now I've really focused on them. But when you hear little comments and things that I've implanted, been planting in these little minds, and then you start hearing yourself, and then their friends start hearing me and them. It's just, it's amazing. And I get so excited for you because you're going to be the most amazing father. And I know Maria is just as loving and beautiful as you are. And, when I look back um, when I look at you and I see that you have that desire to have a child, because I didn't know that until now, because I was wondering, like, I wonder if they're going to have a baby, like what a fun couple to bring into a child, that all their adventures that they do, and it's all the smiles and love, that if
Mm.
what you portray to me when I look at your Instagram or your website, it's like this, there, you're just so in love, and you emanate that through everything. And I know that when you set your life in this intention of being in the now, and you see it with her too, like you both are that way, it's just double the, I mean, it multiplies, not doubles, like, you know, multiplies forever. But yeah, it's just been so fun to watch you and see your journey, and I look forward to continuing that with your new adventures and having a baby. And what would be on my last little question? It just popped into my mind. What
Mm.
would be your advice to your younger, say, 7-year-old self in
Mm.
Chicago? What would you tell that little boy?
7 years old. Mm. Mm. It's such a it's a big question. It's a confronting question, but it's also something that I recognize. I don't think I would say anything to my 7-year-old self. I would just be there for my 7-year-old self. I would put my arms around my 7-year-old self. I would give warmth and understanding and love and that energy. And I really appreciate you for seeing me because one thing, who I am on social media is who I am in person and who I am in life. I love life and I love sharing it with the people who love life as well. And that type of energy that I'm able to have right now, it would be beautiful for me to be able to give that to myself when I'm 7 years old.
Yes, I love that. Oh,
Yeah.
good. Mic drop. I love
Mm.
it. Oh, Alex, thank you so much for being here and sharing you and your magic and everything, and tell people how to get in touch with you or your website and all that. Give everybody all that information.
All right. Well, Instagram is the best place to connect with me. You want to follow the journey, you want to learn some tools, keep uncovering your own magic. You can check me out at Hey Alex Echols. I'm sure you'll put it in like the show notes or
Yeah.
something like that. And if people want to go down that road and see me with my tie on and all that, I'm not really wearing a tie. They can find me at alexechols.com. But one of the things that I'm personally really looking forward to as the creator, right, is getting back out and into the world and starting to put more things out into the world that people can connect with, can engage with. And so I think that that's going to be ripe opportunity for me and you, Ashley, to really continue to build and develop our connection. But then everybody who may be checking out this episode and maybe intrigued,
Hmm.
something's been piqued by being
Yes.
with us here today. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
I love it. Okay. Well, thank you. It's been a joy. Thank you. Thank you.
Absolutely. Yes, thank you as well. And would you mind, because I remember we did connect on Instagram originally. Can you just send me a message on Instagram so that I um we're connected
Oh,
fully
for
there?
sure. Yes.
Yeah.
We'll
Yeah.
for sure do that.
I
Thanks,
really
Alex.
appreciate it. This has been
Oh,
great today.
thank you so much.